Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today was born in San Antonio, Texas, to a Hispanic-American father and British-American mother. She developed an early interest in art and language, winning first place in the National Language Arts Olympiad when she was 11 years old. She studied art and photography at the University of Texas, San Antonio, graduating with honors. Upon the death of her twin in 2014, she decided to write professionally in her sister's honor. Her first novella, a suspense thriller titled The House of Wynne Lift, won the Literary Titan Gold Book Award. Descent of the Vile is her first novel and launches in 2023. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Cheryl Pena.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Cheryl, our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, what took you so long to write your first book?
Well, in my case, I actually never intended to publish anything. I always thought I was just writing for fun, and I've been writing pretty much since I was 3. So even before I knew how to actually write anything, I was making up stories and memorizing them. And my sister and I would draw pictures to kind of go along with the story, and we would put them in order, and we'd make little books out of them. And then later on, when I learned to to actually write, I was writing down stories just constantly, and it was just something I did for fun. And one day I just happened to mention in passing to a friend of mine that I had finished my novella. She said, "I didn't know you were writing." And I'm like, "Oh, I could have sworn she knew that I was still writing, even though, she knew me as a teenager. So she knew I was writing then." But she said, "Well, why?" "Can I read it?" I said, "Sure." And I was a little nervous about it because I've never let anyone read my writing. But she read it and she said, "I really think you should try to get this published." And I was like, "Oh, no one's going to publish this, And I thought, well, let me go ahead and send it to a publisher anyway. And I did, just to prove her wrong, but they said yes. So now I'm already beginning on the journey. I've got 2 books published, and I've got 2 more on the way. So really crazy to me.
That's becoming quite prolific for you after that first novella. And it's very poignant that you chose to honor your twin sister by writing in her memory. Tell us more about that decision and inspiration.
Yeah, she and I were, really close. I mean, as twins usually are. And she used to be a really creative person. She was always drawing and writing as well. And she was very talented at drawing and writing. And I always just wanted to be like her, And she knew I was writing as well. I don't know if I was ever as good as she was, but I thought I can try. And she and I had come up with a story a long time ago that we wanted to co-write together. And she passed away before we could ever really work on it. And somebody else said, "Well, why don't you write it as a novel in her honor?" And I thought, well, why not? I don't know why it never occurred to me. This was after the publication of my first novella. And I thought, well, why not? Why don't I do that? So I'm still working on that one, but that one's going to be a series because it just turned out a lot longer than I expected. But it just seemed like I had to write something that's partly her, because she came up with a lot of the concepts and some of the scenes that I'm going to incorporate into it. So yeah, that one's for her.
That's very special.
Yeah.
You mentioned your first time out of the gate with your novella, getting it published. Did you use an agent or a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
I use a small press. I did, think about an agent, but I couldn't find very many that accept novellas. And since my first one was a novella, I thought that, I probably wouldn't try that this time around. Thinking of doing that possibly with the next book. But I haven't really, really tried to do that very much. So possibly the next one, but with novellas, some of them do, but I couldn't really find any that, especially not with a suspense thriller. Most of those are not novellas, so I didn't really try that.
Well, how did writing your first book change your process of writing?
I think once I realized I could get one published to start, because initially I wasn't sure. I didn't even think it would get published, so I wasn't really trying. But once that one got published, I think it made me a little bit more, I guess, conscientious about it, making sure I actually make time to write every day. And, even if it's in the evening or right before bed or anything, just whenever I have time. And, as long as I'm working on it and still, dedicating time every day. Because if I don't do that, then, of course, I'll never finish anything else. But as long as I'm making dedicated time, then yes. And I didn't do that before. I would take years off of writing that first one, years and years sometimes. And it took me 30 years to write the first one. And it didn't take that long. This one that just came out is probably maybe a month it took to write. So yeah, very, very different.
That's very rapid, writing in a month.
Yeah, but it also isn't a very long novel. So it was originally a novella as well, and I thought I'm cutting a lot out to fit this into the shorter length. So I thought, let me revise it, add in the scenes that I had to cut out, and I did that. And now it's a short novel, but there is a sequel, so I don't know. Maybe someday in the future I might combine them, but right now it's just the one novel.
Well, they say that we all need sequels, at least 3 in each series, so that we can start earning some money. So I think that's a good idea to divide them up.
Yeah, possibly. I wrote them at separate times, and initially this one was going to be a one-off. I did not think I was going to write a sequel. And my friend, who she was one of my beta readers, she read it and she said, I really think you could do another one. And I'm like, no. And she didn't insist exactly, but she did say she thought I could do more with the story. So I thought, well, all right, let me see if I can come up with something else. And sure enough, I did. So there's another one coming.
Well, you have such interesting titles. Tell us what your titles mean for those books and how you came up with those.
Well, the House of Wynne Lift, I came up with, I don't even remember, to be honest. I know it was because it was 30 years ago. I know I took a nap. I remember waking up from the nap and I had the title in my head. I don't know if it was a dream or if it was something else, but I remember that I had that title and I wrote it down and I had the basic concept in my head, but I didn't really think, the whole story or anything. I just had a concept of a guy living in a cave, and then with Descent of the Vile, I thought I wanted something. I had actually I should bring the actual notebook out because I have different words and things written out where I scratch them out and draw and write something underneath, just trying to come up with something that sounded right. And I just really wanted it to mean like attack or something, or assault or something like that. And then I finally thought descent sounded better. And then I wanted to express how I guess dangerous the threat was. And eventually I settled on vile. so it became Descent of the File. But I I've always been interested in sci-fi ever since I was a kid, because my mom got me interested in Star Trek, and I think that was the one night we could stay up late, was when Star Trek was on, because we're always in school, but that was a Saturday night, so it was like Sunday in the morning we could sleep in, and it wasn't really that big a deal. And she couldn't sleep one night. My sister went in there to see what she was doing, and she didn't come back. And I thought, well, I got to see what they're up to. And I went in there to go check on them, and they were watching Star Trek. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I started watching it too, and we all got hooked on it. So of course, the rest of my stories have always been sci-fi stories, and I've been writing that forever. But I just never, again, published anything. But just the House of Wynne Lift was kind of a one-off thing that I never thought anything would come of it, because it's number one, not sci-fi, and number two, because it's a novella. But I don't know.
Well, vile is such a powerful word. It grabs your
Yes.
attention.
Yeah, I hope so. That's and then I also on the cover made that a different font to make it stand out a little bit more. So I just really want to I really want to get people's attention with it. But I also feel like it expresses how horrible the threat is in that book. So hopefully people will like the story, especially if you like something that's kind of creepy. Not all of my books are as dark as this one, but for some reason this one ended up being, well, to be honest, it came from a nightmare I had. So I watched these three movies. It's the Three Flavors Creator trilogy, and it's like they're all horror comedies, so there's comedy elements in them. But for some reason, I had a nightmare, because I watched them all three in a row, and I had a nightmare that night. And I thought, well, let me turn this into a book. Why not? And I wrote it down as quick as I could, what I had dreamt, and I had this idea that this epic journey could come of it. And so that one's a little darker, because, of course, it came from a nightmare that I had. But not all of mine are that dark.
Well, you're not alone. I interview a lot of authors who have dreams, and if they can get it down on paper before that dream evaporates, that's how they get the premise to a lot of stories.
Yeah. And especially if they're really vivid, I'll remember them, but most of the time I don't. So, but if I remember them and they're really vivid, I will definitely write them down, because I feel like it's a good way to come up with something that I might not have thought of consciously,
Did real people inspire any of your characters?
Sometimes, not as often. I feel like I cast them in my head with actors as I write. So I kind of picture their faces and the way they talk when I'm writing, because it just helps me create that unique voice for each character. But I also try to see through their eyes as I write. So to try to, I guess, internalize what they're feeling, so that I can get that out on paper too. So not as much with real people, no, but I just sort of imagine all of that, create that in my head.
Cheryl, have there been any specific books or seminars or writing retreats or groups that you can share that improved your writing journey?
I haven't really been able to do any of those. And it's not really because I'm so isolated, because I'm really not. It's a big city here, but I feel like a lot of those cost money, and I really don't have a lot to invest into the writing journey at this point. So I haven't really done those, but I will say that my beta readers are extremely helpful, because I found author beta readers. So I have people who will go through my manuscripts line by line and correct any errors they might find, or say this line isn't clear, this could be expanded on, whatever. And I think that's extremely helpful. And also just reading constantly, because you can learn a lot about someone else's writing style and what you like in someone else's book, and you can put that into your own writing.
I think all of us authors are voracious readers. I think that
yes,
really
should be anyway. Yes.
we read each other's work a lot.
Yes. Oh, yes, definitely. And I love reading my friends' books. It's so much fun. And I get to beta read for them too sometimes, so I get a sneak peek, and that's kind of cool.
You know, a big challenge for all of us is trying to find publicity that works to get our books out there. Have you found any ways that you can promote your books?
I've been doing some book signings. I'm trying to get into a couple of conventions later this year. I haven't really explored that avenue very much. I feel like with my first book, it was such a whirlwind, and I was kind of surprised at how it went, and then I just devoted myself to writing after that. So I'm kind of new to the marketing side. Trying to do that more this year, because I just I feel like people don't know who I am as much, and I'd kind of like them to learn my name. I do have my author website. I have the page on Goodreads and all of that my publisher set up, but I also feel like I need my own. And so I started through while I was getting my nails done, and the the person who was doing my nails, she was really good about using social media, because she was promoting her business. And one of the things she told me to make sure I do when I post on social media is to make sure I use the hashtags. And it's not something that I usually thought of doing. I don't know why. I'm kind of a noob when it comes to social media, but she did tell me don't forget to put that in there, because a lot of people who don't know you personally yet will discover you that way. And so started to do that a little bit more, and I've gotten a little bit more followers that way. But I'm still exploring all of that right now. Actually, I really don't know a lot about it yet.
Well, one great thing about Goodreads is if you offer to give a book away or several books away for one of their giveaways before publication, then everyone who signs up for those books will receive a notice when your book actually launches, and that can be huge. You could have 2 or 3,000 people sign up.
Yeah, the only thing is it costs quite a bit to list your book, and I don't really have enough money at this point. Well, it's I mean, I could do it technically, but I don't have a car currently, and it's going to be a lot of money for the repairs. So we're kind of trying to save up for that, and there's some other issues with the house. So there's a lot of stuff that's requiring a lot of investment right now that we just don't have anything to put into it. But ideally, I would, and maybe in the future I will.
Yes, and you know, you either can use time or money, I think. And if you have time to sit and do your
Mm,
own social media, then
yeah,
that makes a difference, you know, as well.
yeah, definitely. That's definitely true, and might do that too.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the passages you've brought to share today, and then read a, a section for us so that we can hear your tone and voice?
Okay, I'll try to do that. So I picked a section which is towards the beginning of Descent of the Vile, and to set it up, he's a photographer, and he's been working this job that he sort of ended up giving details to these people, but they didn't seem to really pay attention, and he's kind of annoyed. He's in a bad mood. Things are already going very poorly for him on this day, and so he's leaving, and and things had gone kind of unusually through the job as well, but it didn't really click in what it meant, and it may or may not click in later in the book, but this is the section where he's leaving, and I have him meeting with one of the clients, and he's leaving. So lastly, he retrieved his tripod and waited for Devon to lock the door and escort him back down to ground level. Can you find your way out? Devon asked. The last shuttle should be leaving soon. Yes, thank you, Jackson replied, trying not to allow any resentment to color his tone, although he was annoyed that Devon wouldn't escort him back. Trying to ignore the headache that threatened to explode on him shortly, he hurried across the concourse in the semi-darkness, hoping to catch the shuttle this time around. A few floodlights scattered around the complex barely illuminated the area around with their sodium yellow glow. However, even though the sun had gone down, it was only marginally cooler than in the afternoon. As he reached the edge of the complex, he saw the shuttle driving away to his utter disappointment. Frustrated, he rushed to chase it down, determined not to miss it again, barely reaching it and knocking on the back door to get the driver to stop. The shuttle slowed and then came to a halt, and Jackson felt relieved he wouldn't have to walk the entire way back to his car toward the back of the expansive parking lot. The doors opened, and he checked behind him to see that he was able to bring the view camera case up onto the bottom step. Then he looked up, unable to believe what he saw. Every one of the occupants had a horrifying, ragged appearance, some of them with open wounds or blisters covering their exposed skins. A few of them were twitching in a manner that seemed almost mechanical, as if a machine were malfunctioning. Their blank stares turned toward him, and they watched him as he froze, not knowing what to do or what would happen. Somehow he could sense that they saw him as an outsider and that he didn't belong there. Holding his breath, not daring to move, he could hear his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Then they advanced on him. Although they didn't move quickly, he knew he was in danger. He was still standing against the door and had no space to retreat. So he yanked the emergency brake cord, backing out of the shuttle down the steps, tripping over the camera case and tumbling out onto the concrete below. Ignoring his scraped arms, he only briefly considered grabbing the camera case, but bolted away instead, knowing he didn't have time. So that's my fiction.
That does sound like a nightmare.
Yes. And that was probably the middle of the nightmare that I had. So it ends a little bit later, but I just had the sense that more was coming, and I sort of had an idea of the rest of the plot, but I just didn't, of course, dream that part. But I knew it was coming somehow. Like I sensed it. I don't know. But yeah, so that's one of my darker books.
Well, I know a lot of people who will love that. My sister-in-law loves dark
really?
books. Yes.
I have to admit, I'm not really into them as much. I think it depends on the book. If it's not too gory, then it's okay. But if it's too gory, I'm just not into it.
You will give all of us nightmares.
Yeah, probably. Yes. I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to that sort of thing. I think that's why I like stuff like Star Trek or even like Stargate SG-1 or whatever, because they're kind of more lighthearted in some places. And I like that there's more character oriented, and so I feel like that's kind of more my style. But I won't say that I won't read or do something else. So
Well, Cheryl, you have a mix of cultures in your background and your
I
family.
I do.
Did any of those cultures or all of those cultures influence your writing?
I feel like they do to some degree, because I feel like I don't really fit into any particular place. So because I did do the DNA thing, and it's a mix from every continent pretty much. So it's one of those things where you just feel like you fit in everywhere in some ways, but in other ways absolutely nowhere. And so I feel like most of my characters are kind of outsiders, or they feel like they don't belong either in some way or another. And then you feel like not necessarily like I don't feel like I belong to any specific culture, therefore I don't really bring up the culture of the protagonist very much. I just it's not a big part of my life because it's so jumbled, and there's so many of them that are competing, I guess, for attention. Although growing up in San Antonio, of course, you learn a lot about Hispanic culture. And I've been to Mexico, luckily, a few times, which is always fun. But so I do kind of feel like that influences me a little more than other places. But then I've also been to Europe and other stuff too, so it's not quite. I don't know. I'm not really sure that it's one of those things where any specific culture is going to influence me, but maybe the lack of not having a single culture does.
Well, we're becoming so blended these days. I don't know if we are going to know our cultures in the future.
Yeah, I know, and in some ways it's like because some of the ones that I've got in me are where they were blending a long time ago, because there's such small amounts. And so, at least according to the DNA scan, it was like there's a little bit of Native Mexican, and that region of Mexico where they're from has Southeast Asians and Sub-Saharan Africans, and then in Spain there were the Moors, so I have a little bit of North African in me because I have a little bit of Spanish in me as well. And then in in the British Isles, of course, I have some ancestry there, and the Vikings were there, so I have a little bit of that in me as well, and that was a long time ago. So that I have some of that all blending in me, but it was from a long time ago. So it's kind of odd, but and then of course my parents are from two different cultures as well. But I kind of think that's great. I mean, that's cool. I think it's kind of fun in a way, because my mom, poor mom, she'd be walking with us in the grocery store, and people would stop her. Are they yours? She's like, of course they're mine.
Yes. Well, I think you're a good mix.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I don't know. When I was reading all of that stuff, it was like reading a story. It was fun.
Yeah. Does your family support you as a writer?
I think they do. I think they're pretty excited about it. I mean, I think some of them are a little puzzled by it. Why I would suddenly start doing this, and I'm like, I don't really know, to be honest. But they're my biggest fans. Of course, they support everything I do, and so especially my dad. And so I dedicated Descent of the File to him, because he's probably the most enthusiastic about it. But then I have lots of good friends and people who support me as well with the writing over there. So I have a pretty good support network. Yes.
Do you ever Google yourself or read reviews? If so, how do you deal with the bad or the good ones?
I haven't gotten any bad ones. I got a 3-star rating, so they didn't explain why they didn't like it, or at least thought it was so or whatever it was. I don't even know what they thought about that, because they didn't say. And really, since they didn't say, I don't even know if they didn't like it. Maybe they think 3 is good. I really don't know. But the good ones, of course, make your day. Obviously, when I get those, it's you just feel really good about it. It makes you think, oh wow, so what I'm doing is maybe a good thing. Maybe this is worth it after all. And when you meet people who want to read your book, it's really exciting and fun, and it makes it, I guess, not so isolated, because when you write, of course, you're usually by yourself, and it's good to have people who to be able to connect with people who have read it and who like it a lot. So.
Well, what does writing success look like for you?
I really want to be able to support myself with it. I don't want to be worried about paying the next car payment or whatever. I think it would be really nice if, and I'm not thinking I want to have like a Mercedes or anything necessarily. I want my Yaris back, but I just want to be able to not worry so much about the bills, and it doesn't have to be, like I said, anything extravagant. I don't necessarily have to do, but I just want to be able to support myself with what I'm doing, and be able to do it full time. But
I think we would all love to do that.
That's
the goal of many of us.
Yeah,
to do what you love, and to be able to support yourself doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, everybody wants, you want to enjoy your job, and this is what I enjoy. And it's not that I didn't, enjoy some of the other jobs I've had. Some of them were fine and interesting, and they, I might use that as background at some point, but I did work as a photographer for a while, so that was kind of fun, and I was able to use that in Descent of the File, but just briefly, but still. So.
And I think when you are a photographer or an artist, you have that artistic slant, and that brings a lot of richness to your writing.
Yeah, I think so too. Anybody who is creative, often they have more than one interest, and it's not just one. And so even when I was working as a photographer, I still painted. I still, I learned to knit. I learned to weave with a weaving loom, and I do all kinds of other stuff too. So it's not just, just the writing, but I do love to be able to create things. Just making things out of nothing is fun. And writing is like making things out of words, and it's fun.
And it's like looking through the lens of your camera as well, because that's the way I
Yes.
write. I write as if I can see it happening in real time or on the big screen.
Yeah, me too. And I definitely create the images in my head when I'm writing. So I'll definitely see everything, from my characters' expressions to the setting around them. Yeah, definitely.
Well, Cheryl, as always, our last interview question is our writers over 50 are a unique set. Do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
I would say definitely don't give up. Don't think that, and this is key because it's something that I actually put in my books a lot, is don't think that your life is over just because you're older, and it's never too late to try anything new. It's never too late to start over. And if you really want to pursue it, don't think you can't, because there's nothing holding you back. There really isn't. And I would definitely suggest doing some research, because especially when you're trying something new, you don't know the ins and outs. You don't know, especially if you want to do traditional route. Look into Rider Beware from the SFWA, very important. Also, agentquery.com is another resource that I find very helpful, because they have information about how to evaluate contracts, as well as how to evaluate agents, and what to do when you talk to them for the first time and things like that. It's very, very helpful. And so there's that one. And then there's manuscriptwishlist.com, which helps you find an agent, because it tells you what they're looking for specifically, and when they're open and when they're not. And then lastly is Query Tracker, because Query Tracker lets you look at comments, what people said about the agents, as well as when they're open and when they're not, what kind of queries they accept, and what genres they accept. So I usually use a combination of all of them to be able to research agents, but I haven't really done that much recently. I just did it at first, like I said, because I was running an agent for the House of Wynne Lift, and it just wasn't going to happen. But I would say if you want to do that, or even if you're going to self-publish, look into what you need to do that the proper way, or the best way, where you have the best chance of success.
That's great advice. And we're so happy to have you here with us today from the great city of San Antonio, Texas.
Yes, thank you.
And we're happy to count you now among our authors over 50. Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend, and check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing, and remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.